and I decided many years ago, and we have been faithful, thank you to the Lord, in giving of our tithe faithfully. Anytime there's an increase, by the way, that's the Bible time to tithe. I know some people think tithe is only if you work for it. Bible just says if there's an increase. So if somebody gives you something, tithe on it. If it's an increase to you, it's a tithe. It doesn't matter where it comes from. And my wife and I have been faithful to do that. And what we have found is that God has always been faithful to bless that. He always has been. I've never tithed on something I shouldn't have, and God say, well, too bad, your loss. God has always been good in taking care of us. We give faithfully to missions. We believe strongly in missions. As a result, God blesses. We try to give to guest preachers when they come through. We do. It may not be all that we would like to do, but we decided a long time ago if there's a man of God that comes through, we want to do our best to take care of them and be a help to them. We have an amount that we are bringing this Sunday evening for the offering. And we've got an amount that when or if a stimulus check comes in, we have an amount that we want to give of that. And with all of that, I can honestly say that God meets our needs. And we don't go hungry. We don't have to wear old worn out clothes. Our vehicles are mostly reliable. And if one's not, there's a backup. And the Lord has been good in that way. God truly has been good to us in many, many ways. However, here's the fun part. I still can't help but think every now and then, if I had all the money that I spent at Starbucks in the last year, that would be great. I mean, that would be good. Have you ever looked at your bank statement and thought, if I had all the money that we spent eating out, what a blessing. Or if we didn't have to pay so much for our cell phones, boy, what a blessing that would be. Which, by the way, you may not have to. Cricket has some really good deals if you only need 80% coverage. Every now and then I'll look at the bank account and think, man, if we had the money we spent eating out, or even if we would have limited to eating out once a month, limit here, what a blessing that would be. And certainly God meets our needs, and we're not without because we did that. And perhaps that's why some of those things continue, is because we're not out by doing that. But I want to look at a thought this evening with these two titles in mind. I don't want to spend much time on the introduction, so let's just jump right into our text. We see the Israelites, first of all, they are given an unknown provision of God. And the reason I say unknown is because they didn't know the ultimate plan for what God was giving them. We read in Exodus chapter 11, the first 3 verses, where God told them to go to the Egyptians and that he was going to use them to provide for them. He was going to use that as a means of provision, gather their gold and their silver, ask to borrow it. Now, they all didn't have the same amount. It all had to do with how much work the individuals did. And as they would ask to borrow, and maybe some thought it unnecessary and ended up with nothing. Maybe some tried to beat everybody else to the richest of the Egyptians and tried to get the most. I don't know what their mindset was, but I know God used this to provide for them and gave them this gold and this silver. He did not tell them the purpose. He didn't reveal his plan. But here's what I do know. I know they didn't need it to buy their way across the Red Sea. God took care of that. I know they didn't need it to purchase manna. God provided that. I know they didn't need it to purchase a water filtering system when they got to Mara because the water was bitter. I know God took care of that. They didn't need it to buy new shoes and clothing while they wandered through the wilderness. God took care of that. And so God gave them this unknown provision. He gives them this gold, this silver. They do not know what it is for. And so they are holding on to that gold and silver, and they maybe just started thinking that it was just some kind of a bonus personal gift from God. Maybe God just loves me. Maybe God actually wants to help me build my kingdom. Hey, wouldn't that be great? So they have this unknown provision. God is providing for them, but as far as they know, they don't know the ultimate cause of this or the ultimate purpose for this. And so they are holding on to this unknown provision of God. Well, then we come to Exodus chapter number 32, and we see an unwise use of a godly provision. An unwise use of a godly provision. We see in the text that we read in these 6 verses that Aaron asked for all their golden earrings. And so they start gathering up this gold, everybody, and they start bringing it together and they give it to Aaron so that they can have a kind of a time like they had in Egypt. Kind of experience what they saw the Egyptians experience. Not worshiping the true God, though they say the words here, they know full well where idols came from. And with this, of course, this is a great principle, by the way, and I would encourage you tonight, there's going to be a lot of principles that are listed throughout this. If one comes to your mind, write it down and remember it and allow the Lord to use it. But there's a great principle in this that as they are gathering all of this, they are giving it. Here's what I come to find out. In the end, worship that is not truly to God ultimately has an entertaining factor. So even though in the beginning, the first verses, they mention it's for God, when it comes down to verse number 6, he actually says they rose up to play. This was fun. This was entertaining. Now, true worship is enjoyable, but in a humility, in a humbling way, not in a let's go be entertained type of way. And so they have this unwise use of godly provision. God has provided them gold and silver. It wasn't their idea. It wasn't of their own whatever. It was something that God provided for them. And I'll say this, whether you work or you get a Christmas bonus, it is God who provides for his children. And we thank the Lord for whatever source that he uses. And so as they get this provision of God, they are holding on to it. They see an opportunity to do something with it. Little do they even maybe consider that this might not be why God gave the provision. This may not be the purpose of what God gave to them. This may not be where God wants them to spend it. And you can see now where my study time became a great time of prayer and apologies to the Lord. So we see an unwise use of godly provision. I don't have to ask for a raise of hands. I could just say, sit in your seat if you've ever spent God's money unwisely. And great to see all of you participate. Because we have taken what God has provided and we have at times spent it in places that we should not and at times that we should not. I asked Brother Tim, I said, well, here's the conclusion of the message really. If you had everything that you wasted in the last year, and he goes, oh my goodness, just stop. That was as far as I got. The truth is, sometimes that can be all of our story. Different extent for different people, of course. So God has a plan. Here's what's interesting. And we'll get to this at the end. But while this is going on, down on earth level, God is actually talking to Moses, telling Moses what he wants them to do with that gold. Now, they don't know it. So God has a plan, and God is talking to Moses, saying, here's what I want them to do with it. And before they get the message, they take it and start using it in ways they weren't supposed to. And so we see the unwise use of godly provision. Instead of waiting patiently, because God does have a plan for what he gives you. And he has a purpose. And God will reveal his plan in his timing for what he wants, how he wants you to be a steward of what he has given you. You say, well, what are we supposed to do until we know? Wait, I say, on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. Well, why is God giving this provision? I don't know, but he'll reveal it. He'll let you know. But to take what God has provided and dish it out just because God is providing it is a good way to get God to stop providing it, which we're actually going to see here. So while they are using godly provision for play, we then see thirdly, the kindled anger of God and Moses. Look at chapter 32 here in verse number 9. So we'll come back and look at these other verses a little bit later. But in verse number 9, the Lord said unto Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. He just told them what they're doing. And then verse 10, now therefore let me alone. Here's God talking to Moses. You ready? Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, that I may consume them. And I will make of thee a great nation. I don't need them to do this. I'll make you a great nation, Moses. And Moses besought the Lord his God and said, Lord, why doth thy wrath wax hot against thy people, which thou hast brought forth out of the land of Egypt with great power and with a mighty hand? Wherefore should the Egyptians speak and say, for mischief did he bring them out, to slay them in the mountains and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn from thy fierce wrath and repent of this evil against thy people. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, thy servants, to whom thou swarest by thine own self, and saidst they unto them, I will multiply your seed as the stars of heaven, and all this land that I have spoken of will I give unto your seed, and they shall inherit forever. And the Lord repented of the evil which he thought to do unto his people. Repent just simply means change his mind. All right, I won't destroy them. So God's angry. Well, why is he so angry? Well, he had plans for what he provided, what he had given them for provision. And they take it, it's twofold. One, they're wasting what God had given them because he has a great purpose for it. Two, they're worshiping false idols. So we see this anger of God. Well, then we see Moses. Now remember, Moses just talked the Lord into changing his mind. Well, now Moses gets down and he actually sees, because up to this point he hasn't seen it. God just said, these people are crazy, I'm going to go down and I'm going to kill them. Moses said, hold on, Lord, you don't want a bad testimony with all the Egyptians and all of this sort of thing. So he says, all right, I'll leave him alone. Moses goes down and look at verse number 11. Verse number 19 of chapter 32. It came to pass, as soon as he came nigh into the camp, that he saw the calf and the dancing, and Moses' anger waxed hot. He cast the tablets out of his hand, brake them beneath the mount. He took the calf which they had made and burnt it in the fire, ground it into powder, strawed it upon the water, and made them drink it. Isn't that wonderful? I mean, you talk about angry. Now, here's the thing. Moses knows what they were supposed to do with that gold, because God was telling him while he was in the mountain. And they're down on earth taking it because they don't know the plan yet. They think that it is in their power to make the plan. Boy, haven't we all been guilty of this? And so they think it's in their power, and so they use it. However, God is angry. Moses asks him to reconsider, and the Lord does reconsider. Then Moses actually sees what's happening. Now remember, it says here he's dancing. Later he says they're without clothes on. I mean, this thing is a disaster all the way around. Moses just gets upset, and think about this, he is so angry, he takes the tablets that God has written on with his own finger and throws them down, and they break. You say, yeah, we've seen the movie, everything, whatever. Let me tell you this. What would you think of a preacher who got so mad at you, he took his Bible by 3 pages and threw it across the room and ripped it out? You'd think, that's unnecessary. That is God's word. Well, actually, it's just paper, right? The words are God's words, and those were just tablets, and God provided another one. I don't recommend I'm actually thought about this, Brother Corey. I think I'm going to preach this message somewhere and get a Bible cover just with blank paper and just do it in a service and see everybody's response, because that's probably the way they would have responded. What is he doing? Except there may be preachers bigger and stronger than me and throw me out before I have a chance to explain myself. So God is angry. Moses is angry. And then we actually see a visible jealousy of God. Go to chapter number 34. Moses goes back up to the mountain. God says, go down and tell them this. This is what's going to happen. And this is what they are to do. These are the instructions. So Moses comes down. Exodus has a lot of repeating. It'll have verses where God says, tell them this. And then it'll have like 6 chapters, Moses told them this. It's the same thing, just showing that Moses was obedient and giving the message. Well, we come to chapter number 34 and verse number 11 and look at what Moses tells them, Moses tells them at the command of God. Observe thou that which I command thee this day. Behold, I drive out before thee the Amorite and the Canaanite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite. I'm going to give you another victory. These people are also going to go. Well, what happened last time God gave a victory? He gave them some instruction. Get their gold. Get their silver. Well, look what happens this time. Verse 12, take heed to thyself, lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest. In other words, in case you do what you did with the Egyptians, start acting like them. Lest it be a snare in the midst of thee. But ye shall destroy their altars, break their images, cut down their groves, for thou shalt worship no other God. For the Lord whose name is jealous is a jealous God. Lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go a-whoring after their gods, and do sacrifice unto their gods, and one call thee, and thou eat of his sacrifice, and thou take of their daughters and thy sons, their daughters go a-whoring after their gods, and make thy sons go a-whoring after their gods. Thou shalt make thee no molten gods. Whoa, it's pretty direct, right? Because he knows what just happened. Well, what happened? They got used to the ways of Egypt, and they made themselves a molten calf. And he says, now you're not going to get any of that. It's all going to go to waste. You're not going to get any more provision because you didn't handle the last provision the way you were supposed to. Well, we could preach a whole message on that, couldn't we? I had plans for this, and now I am not going to be able to do what I wanted to do, and you will not have the blessing that you would have had if you would have just trusted me with the provision. And so now you're going to go down. I'm still going to give you victory because I'm still God and I'm still going to fulfill my promise, but your provision is not going to be the same. And so we see the visible jealousy of God. They could not be trusted to keep any of the new gold and silver until the appointed time, until God said now. Well, then we finally see the revealed plan of God. We're in Exodus 34. Do you remember when God gave them this gold and silver? Exodus 11. There is a lot of time going on here. And they have this gold and this silver that God has provided, but God does not reveal the plan for them until Exodus 34, which means in my life, I can rest assured that there are times when God will give provision, but it doesn't mean he's going to tell me what he wants me to do with it. And so I can't get ahead of God. Well, what was the revealed plan? Look at chapter 34, verse 27. Does anybody remember what God was telling Moses in the mountain? Well, he's about to tell them. The Lord said unto Moses, chapter 34, verse 27, write these words, for after the tenure of these words have I made a covenant with thee and with Israel. He was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did neither eat bread nor drink water. He wrote upon the tables the words of the covenant, the 10 commandments. Had to redo them. And it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moses wist not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with them. So we know he came down from the mountain and he has a message. Of course, he calls them, calls some of them together, gives them the plan. Well, then we jump to chapter 35, and now he's telling the entire congregation. So here's what God was telling Moses while they're down spending what God had provided. And Moses gathered all the congregation of the children of Israel together, and said unto them, these are the words which the Lord hath commanded that ye should do them. 6 days shall work be done, but on the 7th there shall be to you an holy day, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death. Ye shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day. What work? Verse 4, Moses spake unto all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, this is the thing which the Lord commanded, saying, take ye from among you an offering unto the Lord. Whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it, an offering of the Lord. What does he want them to bring? Gold, silver, and brass. Whoa. I got to be honest, when I read through this in my Bible reading, it clicked for the first time that this is what God provided for them. All the way back in Exodus 11, because he didn't want them to be hurt when it came offering time. He wanted them to be able to say, this is why God gave this to us. It's of a willing heart. He didn't come and say, now give everything that you took from Egypt. He's saying, I'm going to provide for you because I have a plan for this. And when it comes time, he reveals his plan, and then we see, now I see why God gave the provision. Now I see why God gave. He didn't tell them in Exodus 11, and if you keep reading here, look at verse number, I don't want you to think it's just an offering. Verse 6, in blue and purple scarlet, fine linen, goat's hair. Anybody remember what he's building? This was the offering for the tabernacle. All the way back in Exodus chapter 11, he says, I'm going to provide for you. I want you to get this gold and silver. I'm not going to tell you why, but I'm going to give it to you. You don't need it to buy your way across the Red Sea. I'll take care of it. You don't need it to buy manna. I'll take care of that. You don't need it to make the water sweet. I'll take care of that. You don't need it for shoes. You don't need it for clothes. I'll take care of those things. I just want to give you a blessing. I want to give you provision above those things. And there's the principle. Yes, God does meet our needs, but he also gives us provision above our needs. And we can take that provision above our needs, and if we don't know for sure what God wants done with it, we can start picking our own, I guess the Bible word to be play. Isn't that what they spent it on? Play. Nothing wrong with play. This is where the balance, this has been my struggle in preparing the message. God doesn't want us to sit around doing nothing and not enjoying anything of life. He came that we might have life and have it more abundant, and we are to be people of joy. But if buying things is our only source of joy, then we need to evaluate spiritually. And so the understanding here is, God, you have given above needs. I don't want to be the one to make the decision. There's nothing, God is not opposed to hobbies and enjoyment and eating out and fellowshipping with people. God is not opposed to those things, and he'll put things on our heart when it comes to offering or missions or things of that sort. But I would say, and I'll ask you the same question I asked Brother Tim, and I had to ask myself multiple times, if I had now everything I've spent foolishly in the last 3 years, how easy would $150,000 be for that building? Isn't that interesting? Well, I had to look in the mirror and say, don't like that one. Don't like it. And he didn't command all of it, and he doesn't command us. And I think everybody knows my heart here. I don't want to keep overly explaining the balance and the value of balance. But God is giving this plan. God is actually telling this to Moses. Matter of fact, go to, let's see here. Go to chapter 31, verse number 18. So the last verse of Exodus 31. So he writes these things down for Moses in 31. He gave unto Moses, when he made an end of communing with him upon Mount Sinai, 2 tables of testimony, tables of stones, written with the finger of God. So he gives them these tables. Now here's what we do know. After Moses goes back up, he's there another 40 days. So God was not done talking to Moses here. But verse chapter 32 starts saying, meanwhile, down on earth, here's what the people are doing. And so look at verse number 7 of chapter 32. After he hands them these, he has to stop giving the instruction and says, and the Lord said unto Moses, go get thee down, for thy people which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, they have corrupted themselves. They actually are, God is interrupted with the message that he is trying to give to Moses. It says, okay, you need to go down there. We'll continue this later. These people are crazy. I'm giving you the instruction. I'm giving you the plans for the tabernacle. That's what he's about to give them and to finish giving them. I am giving you the law. I'm giving you their way of living. But we need to interfere with that and go handle this because I have a plan for them. They don't know it yet, but I do have a plan. And so we see that God interrupts these instructions. Now we come to chapter 35 and verse number 5. He says, whosoever is of a willing heart, let him bring it an offering of the Lord, gold, silver, and brass. Here's what I come to realize. There were some who no longer had any gold to bring. Nothing. Well, I just can't. Well, why? Well, remember that golden calf? It was fun. And we was dancing and eating, but I don't have anything else now that God reveals the plan. Well, some may have still been able to give. I thank the Lord that we're still able to give, but I'll be the first one tonight, and I don't even care if nobody else follows. I'll be the first one to say we're not able to give everything that we could give if we had been more wise over the past few years. And I know this isn't for everybody. There are some who are going to say, preacher, that I don't have, I spent my 2 times the way I can spend them. And, that's the way it is. And that's fine. And not everybody, remember all the way back in Exodus 11, he didn't say divide this up evenly. It wasn't everybody with the same amount of gold and silver, and he didn't even command everybody to give the same amount. He simply said, go get some, and whatever you have, if you're willing, if you have any left and you're willing to give it, give it. And I'm afraid sometimes we treat God's business the same way. We live life, and then if we have anything left to give, we willingly give. When I have been challenged through this to say, God, why is the provision now? And can I make better decisions so that when you do reveal your plan, that I'm able to do more towards your plan? I certainly know this is where the Lord hit me. Some could not do what they would like to do. Some couldn't do all that God had planned for them to do. Which is where the first title of the message came in, what a waste of a good blessing. Well, what's the blessing? The blessing is not having the gold and silver. The blessing is being able to give it towards the tabernacle. That's the blessing. We're going to build a tabernacle, a place we can worship the Lord and we can offer our offerings. We don't have to just wait till we get to the land that God promised us. We can start now and you can give towards this. That is the blessing. But instead, a lot of them had to look and say, I can't. I can't. A waste of a good blessing. I don't think it's any secret that we are in a war spiritually. This year, or this week, the week leading up to Easter, 2 major things have happened. One, the whole Nike shoe push, if you're aware of that. A very demonic thing that has taken a lot of attention. The other one, our own city has not put out a statement, a local city statement in over 4 weeks about not gathering. And then the week of Easter, they put out a long statement saying, remember this week, no large gatherings. We are in a spiritual war. Now, the individual handling that may have been aware of Easter. I'm sure they were. And maybe they weren't. But either way, there are a lot of people that need reached. And just as there was a plan there, isn't it interesting? Here's the way I remember. I'm going to say this not in, I hope everybody here knows my heart enough I don't have to over-explain these things. But we're in this spiritual battle. And we have people all across our world who will pay $100 a month on cable and $20 a month to missions. Isn't that interesting? Or let's go to cell phones, $200 a month. I heard 3 people say, I wish. And then give $50 to a special offering when a preacher comes through. I'm not opposed to those things. And this is where I say, please know my heart on this. Please know. But I'm saying, how many times has God provided because he knew there'd be a special speaker in, or he knew there'd be missions. And in the meantime, there's extra this and extra this, extra just play of life. And because there's extra play, I have to fulfill my bill, my responsibilities, my obligations. I have to keep my word on those things. And we absolutely do. But as a result, now we stand back like the Israelites saying, well, I've got some left. But is it all that God intended me to have? I don't know.